I've been a little delayed getting this video published. Okay, 3 years delayed. But today, I'm getting into my art desk build, and by the end of the video, the 2 lower cabinets will be complete, and the desk will look like this. When we left off in part 1, I had the 4 panels that make up the outside of the lower cases dry fit. The next parts to worry about are the shelves and the back panels. Like the side panels, the shelves and back will be made from 3/4 inch plywood and shop sawn veneer. So I'm getting started by ripping down the plywood to be a little oversized for my final dimension. I'm gluing on some thick hardwood edging to give myself enough material to be able to trim the panels down after they get the veneer. As for the veneer, I need a lot of it. I think I spent the whole day here just going back and forth between the bandsaw and the joiner, cutting veneers down from some 12/4 inch boards, making sure, of course, to keep them in order to be book matched later. Most of the veneers being cut down from what you can see was originally one board that had a big epoxy fill in the middle of it. Like I did for the side panels, I'll be separating out the better book matched pieces for the outsides of the different panels and using the less desirable pieces inside. After I got it all cut, I think I probably spent another several hours the next day getting all this veneer run through the drum sander. Shop-made veneer looks great, but man is it labor intensive. Before I could glue any of the veneer, I still had to flush up the hardwood edging. I know it's been a minute since the first video came out, but you may remember the router setup from the smaller side panels. I still had that set up, but with these larger boards, I just had to be a little bit more controlled running them through with just how large they are. I tried something a little different to clean up the edges of the veneer. I used this tapering jig, which is already set up as a zero clearance jig, and the part that's normally used to set the angle worked out to be a pretty good clamp, so I could gang several pieces of veneer together and run them all through at once. It actually worked really well. The actual veneering of the panels was a lot of rinse and repeat from the side panels. I taped the individual pieces together, flipped them over, glued them into one sheet, and then once that dried, I glued a panel at a time using my vacuum bag. I was able to clean up all 4 sides of the smaller back panels on the table saw with the crosscut sled, but I used my circular saw or track saw or circular saw with this track attachment, whatever it is. It worked really well to get a clean edge on the larger bottom panels that I could then use as a reference edge to get the other 3 sides cleaned up. Now once I had that one good edge on each panel, I could use the table saw to square up the panels. I marked the width directly from the bottom cabinets, and the first cut was a little tight, but with a few minor adjustments I was able to get the perfect fit on both bottom panels and both bottom shelves. Then I could cut them to their final lengths, and the last step was to notch the corners out to fit around the legs. I got one of the two cabinets dry fit together, and then I spent some time doing the woodworking task I do more than any other, staring at it. The joinery on the lower cabinets is going to be a lot to lay out, so before I start marking anything, I just need to stare at it a little bit, think through what the layout is going to be and what the order of operations is going to be. I used my mortiser for most of the joinery on the panels, but there were a couple mortises that I had to cut that the mortiser just couldn't handle it due to them being kind of in the middle of the board. Luckily, they weren't anything that good old-fashioned router with a fence attachment couldn't handle. These mortises are part of the knockdown joinery connecting the two lower cabinets, and these panels will also need some holes for bolts that will connect the cabinets to the cross brace that you can see here. One of the last pieces I need before I can assemble this is this top webbing that's going in each of the bottom cabinets. This webbing is going to serve three purposes. First, it's going to keep the drawers from tipping when they get pulled out. Second, I'm going to use this to actually locate the top onto the lower cabinets. And then third, this is also going to provide the mounting points where I'm actually attaching the top to the lower cases with some bolts, some knockdown style attachments. So the base assemblies are now glued up, but I did run into one problem, or rather one mistake that I made. And that is when I glued up the drawer runners, up here. When I went to measure their length, I wanted to do it off of the actual piece, not based on measurements, which is what I did. However, my mistake was I only measured off of one of these pieces, the other lower cabinet actually. This is the one that I did not measure off of. So what happened was I measured the distance, and the 2 drawer runners I cut for the other one were perfect. However, there was a little bit of forward and back play in this back support that these drawer runners connect into in the tenons when I glued them in. And so I had glued that in. Apparently on this one it was about a 1/16 of an inch further forward. And that's just based on the way I had my mortise set up, kind of like the loose setting on a domino. So this was about a 1/16 of an inch further forward, which meant that these two were about a 1/16 of an inch too long. And I didn't notice that until I went to put it all together. Again, because I measured everything off that other piece. So during my glue up with epoxy all over everything already, I went to install these, and when I installed this this front piece in, it became pretty clear pretty quickly because it cracked the front of the dovetail on both sides and created a little bit of a gap on the back side of the dovetail. I went forward with the glue up and got some clamping pressure to hold everything together. However, I did have to go back with some epoxy and fill in these gaps and reinforce these, and now I need to go and clean that up. So this feels like a good place to stop. The base assemblies are basically done. There is still one additional thing I need to do, and that's on the inside of the drawer boxes. There needs to be a spacer to even up the side of this cabinet with the inside face of these drawer legs so that I have a nice smooth surface for the drawers there. But other than that, the bases are basically done. So I'm going to end it here. And in the next video, I'm going to start working on the actual desktop part of this. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you then.